Hey, spectacular entrepreneur. I'm sitting on the carpet, which means it's a Podcarpet episode. And what does that mean? It means that it's one of those episodes that's a little more personal, it's a little more intimate, it's a little more vulnerable for me. And so for these episodes of the Heart Centre Business Podcast, I like to sit on the carpet of my craft room and record them in a different position because it feels like it's a different kind of conversation. You can visualize yourself sitting on the carpet with me. Maybe we've got our crochet out and we're just gossiping and chatting amongst ourselves as business owners. And not only is it a Podcarpet episode, it's also a Tashmas episode, which means I've got a gift for you today as well. Now, what are we talking about on the carpet? Why am I down here? Well, I'm going to share with you why Ryan, a fictional character who used to be a real person, is something that motivates me now. Why does Ryan actually motivate me now as a business owner? And thinking about this random avatar of a person now. And so it is a little bit vulnerable. It is a little bit tender. And this is episode number 489 of the Heart Centre Business Podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/489. And as I said, it's day 4 of Tashmas, so I've got a little gift for you as well. Let's dive in. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. First and foremost, I do want to be clear that Ryan is fictional now. So Ryan is a man's name that for me is symbolic and represents an amalgamation of some of the types of entrepreneurial men and online creator men that I have had interactions and experiences with in the past as a business owner. And back in my very early days of business in 2013 and 2014, there was a real Ryan, right? There was a real Ryan back in the day. And nowadays, I don't know where that Ryan is. I haven't been in connection with that Ryan for a very, very long time. I don't think I've heard an update about him since like 2015, maybe 2016. So it's more of a general avatar of hustle bro kinds of marketers. The marketers and business coaches, generally men who have that sort of, oh, it's really easy, why haven't you made $1 million by now kind of attitude. And they tend to fall into a few different behaviors, stereotypes, and categories that for me, I can very quickly amalgamate and get clear on when I am considering that style of business. Yeah. So you know that I'm not someone to be anti-gender or, you know, I can't be anti-men because like I have a male fiance. That's a joke. That's reversing the misogynist statement that like I'm not a misogynist because I have a daughter or whatever it might be. So I was being sarcastic when I said that, just caveat, right? But there definitely is a core kind of conglomerate of these kinds of hustle bro marketers. And I will sometimes have men reach out to me and say that something that I said about hustle bro marketers was deeply offensive and that's sexist. Ultimately, if these types of categorizations and characteristics don't apply to a male business owner or entrepreneur or marketing guru, then they don't fall into that category. So they shouldn't be offended, right? So it's the type of space that you might have been in before where you see a lot of over-promising and under-delivery, an over-zealous focus simply on numbers and dollars and marketing and sales, there's not a lot of conversation or context around making sure you deliver on your promises, making sure that those sales are actually resulting in a good outcome for the person who buys something. And the number one priority clearly is self-gain. It feels like it's quite obvious when you're looking at the way that they show up, the messaging that they're sharing, the way that they talk about themselves and their successes, that self-gain is that number one priority. And also there's a lot of coercion-based, very aggressive marketing strategies and tactics used. So they do frustrate and disappoint me. I will be very clear on that. I wish that this wasn't such a strong subculture in the online business and entrepreneurial space. It gives the rest of us trying to teach online marketing and business strategy in particular a really tough time and a bad name, because a lot of people have had an experience with one of these people. A lot of people have been, unfortunately, lured into spending a lot of money and being disappointed in the results, and being disappointed in the strategy, being disappointed in the way that they were treated once they'd actually handed over their money. And particularly if that is your experience, the first few people that you buy from when entering into the online marketing space or online business, it's easy to decide that everyone else is like that as well. So yes, I do get frustrated and I feel disappointed that so many people have had an experience of buying from a Ryan. And for the first couple of years of my business, those experiences of hearing horror stories, seeing some of the experiences I had myself or that business besties had, working with a Ryan or buying from a Ryan, it made me question whether I even wanted to be part of the industry. And that's the bit that frustrated me the most, was that I knew that I had a viable alternative to share in consent-based marketing. I knew that a lot of what they were doing was out of alignment with the values and integrity of the people who were buying from them. I could see how many people were getting lured into buying something and ultimately feeling like it didn't deliver, or it was trying to get them to use tactics and strategies that they didn't want to, that they felt like they weren't getting really treated very well as a client. And so it made me question whether I wanted to be part of it. It made me question whether it was even worth me showing up and trying to reach other people, try and reach clients, try and reach my audience and help them, because I was being drowned out by the Ryans. Remembering that there was one Ryan, but there was a lot of Ryans, right? And I just like using the name for the avatar because it really lands it for me. And as I said, the last update that I heard about the actual Ryan was like he had sold all of his worldly possessions and moved to Southeast Asia somewhere and was doing meditation and silent retreats or something. Like it's just not even on my radar anymore. But these Ryans were basically ruining it for the rest of us. And you might have felt this before in your business as well. And that's why I wanted to be vulnerable and come and share this as a Podcarpet episode, because there's probably something that you're frustrated with in your own industry. There's probably a sub-niche or a subculture that you find particularly problematic. You know, I talk to people who are in the money space, and there are a lot of people making big promises and coming across as though they are financial advisors, and they're not following industry standards and they're not following financial disclosures, or people who are in the mindset space and they're very frustrated about toxic positivity and bypassing and some of those pieces. or people who work with the nervous system and they see shonky providers out there who are not trauma informed and they're leaving their clients more distressed than when they started working together. So I wanted to share this because I have my fair share of those types of things in the marketing space, in the social media space, in the sales strategy space. For me, there are a lot of Ryans out there, and there's probably a lot of Ryans in your industry as well. And so for many years, when I would hear these stories, when I would have people say, oh my gosh, I can't work with you, I don't have any money left, I put $15,000 on my credit card to work with this guy, and it was all promise and it was all smoke and mirrors and there was actually nothing of substance. And here I am a year later and I haven't even got back my initial investment. And so I can't invest in anything else. I can't buy anything else until I've figured this out, and I have to do it on my own. And like, that was so frustrating for me as well, because for the Ryans out there, a lot of the time, the people who ended up not getting return on investment were women and marginalized people, because the strategies that they were being told they needed to do in order to be successful were dodgy, were out of alignment, were coercive. And so people would buy from these people, they would be told to do things that they didn't feel comfortable doing, and then they would have it turned back on them when they were frustrated or asked questions or shared that they didn't feel like it was a values alignment. They'd be told, oh, that's just your money mindset. You're just not hungry enough. There's something wrong with you. And so the thing that was frustrating me was that I felt like I was almost like swimming upstream against a hugely powerful force. And that force was wiping out a lot of businesses, a lot of business owners who I could see had amazing potential, had brilliant offers, or had an amazing service that needed to be out there in the world. And they were not only being given terrible marketing and sales strategy, if anything at all, like a lot of it was just, there's nothing, just give away 50 free coaching sessions a month and learn this sales conversation structure. And the more you do it, the more free sessions you do, the more clients you'll get, right? And so for a lot of people, they were taking that experience and making it mean that they weren't cut out for business. And that's the bit that peeved me off the most, was that the people who ended up deciding that online business was not for them, entrepreneurship was not for them, sales and marketing wasn't something that they wanted to do, were the women and marginalized people. And they were the people who I wanted most to have the money, to have the success, to have the results. That's my whole mission, is to get more economic wealth and economic power into the hands of women and marginalized people. And what I was seeing was that the Ryans' most successful clients were other Ryans. And so it just really frustrated me. And it also made me think, what is the point? Why am I even bothering? How on earth am I supposed to compete with this? But these days, and, you know, it's been quite a while now, I am able to view it far more differently. And instead of it depleting my energy for my work, instead of using that as a reason for me to question whether I should be doing this or not, I was able to really transform this into motivation. I am so motivated when I hear these horror stories. Still to this day, it fires me up and I collect it as fuel, because I know that the less I show up, the less I am creating an alternative, a viable alternative for people. So, you know, it motivates me because so many of my clients, so many of you in my audience when I talk about these kinds of marketers, these kinds of business strategists or coaches or mentors, whatever they call themselves, mostly experts, they love to refer to themselves as thought leaders as well. Ha ha ha, right? I can joke about it now. But a lot of people have paid a lot of money to Orion before they find me. And they tell me those horror stories, and it used to deplete me. It used to make me feel frustrated. It used to make me think, what is the point? Now it fires me up. If I had been more consistent, if I was sharing my podcast more consistently, if I was investing more in my ads, if I was, growing my business faster, I could have cut that off at the pass. So there's so much more work for me to do. There's so much more audience for me to grow. There's so much more of this message for me to share. And the more clients that work with me and learn about consent-based marketing, the more that their clients experience the difference. And then their clients get excited about consent-based marketing. We are actually changing the standard in the industry by role modeling what beautiful consent-based marketing and sales strategy looks like. And so then when the consent-based marketing approach becomes the most common consent-based marketing approach, which is also part of the mission here, then those hustle bro marketers and all of that coercion stuff, it will be far more jarring and far less accepted as, oh, that's just sales. That's just, that's just the charming, smarmy sales approach that a lot of these online marketers use, right? And so now I am starting to see that tide turning. People are far more discerning as buyers. They're also far more discerning about the way that they let people treat them and how long they'll stay on a mailing list of someone who's sent them 17 emails in 6 days. They'll unsubscribe faster. They'll unfollow faster. And even people now are sending me messages saying, hey, I was on this sales call and this person said, oh, what is it costing you not to invest? And I actually stood up to them and said, that's a horrific coercion-based marketing strategy and you've just convinced me not to work with you. Because if you have to resort to that kind of emotional and psychological trickery in order to get a sale, you're not very good at marketing. You're not very good at sales strategy because you're resorting to trickery. And so thank you so much for being honest about who you are in this sales call. I'm out. And I love hearing those stories of people actually reflecting it back. They're pushing back against this kind of approach. I love hearing those stories now. And the more prolifically I share and the more I encourage others to set that standard and also demonstrate how consent-based marketing is actually more cost-effective and time-effective these days anyway, the more that we can turn that tide and change the way it happens. So it motivates me because I feel like the work that I'm doing now to talk about consent-based marketing and to grow my audience and to create podcasts like this that people share with their friends, the more I can prevent that regret that people have, that buyer's remorse, people forking out money to providers that ultimately don't have their best interests at heart, that are overly focused on making the sale, not actually delivering on what that sale promises. Another part of that experience that has transformed from self-doubt to motivation is the client results that they would share as well. And it used to really make me feel like maybe I was selling my audience short or I was costing them results by having them work with me rather than working with Orion, because the Ryans would be sharing these overnight success stories, these examples of businesses that were just doing phenomenally so quickly. And I wanted those results for my clients as well. So it would have me second guessing and doubting because I think, well, maybe they should be working with the Ryans. Maybe they should be tapping into that because look at all of this wealth that is being generated. And as I've previously shared, it was mostly other Ryans who were being the most successful ones. But then when I back at that now, I recognize, number one, part of the reason why their most successful clients mostly look and sound like them is because those clients are the ones who are willing to use some of these more coercive marketing strategies. Their clients are also overly focused on sales and getting the money and that self-gain side of being a business owner, rather than, yes, I'm creating financial success for myself in delivering amazing services, in changing people's lives for the better. And so I can now see with a lot more perspective that the Ryans don't necessarily serve my audience to their best outcome, to their best results. But also, I've learned so much about some of those client success stories and testimonials and some of the strategies used for them over the years. So most of them are completely discredited. Most of them aren't actually the results, or the way that the result was generated hasn't been told in a fully transparent way. I remember hearing about someone in a course that I joined who their first ever launch of their online course was $100,000 in sales. And I was so excited for that. And I joined the course and I was like, I'm going to do better than that person. And I found out years later that they spent $155,000 on ads to make $100,000 in sales. But they did that with the intention of being the poster child of that course and using that fame as a way to grow their own audience organically and not have to spend money on ads so much into the future. They needed a 6-figure launch result to be able to get more clients, right? And so like that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to some of these stories. I also have recently been informed about some of the other ways that providers like this, the Ryans, get clients to be giving them these amazing testimonials. And one of those is that they financially incentivize people to share their results, or they incentivize them with reach. So if you want to be featured on a Ryan's socials and be promoted, then the best way to do that is to share your success story. And so I've had people divulge to me that they've faked the results that they had working with a Ryan because they knew when they were inside the program that actually it wasn't going to teach them anything new. They could see that the strategies that were being taught weren't consent-based, weren't aligned with their values, but they'd already sunk $10,000 into the program, or they'd sunk $15,000, $20,000 to join this particular program. And so to get return on their investment, they wanted to be platformed to that person's audience. So they said they had a $150,000 month 3 months after joining the program, but it wasn't true. But they knew that if they said that, they would be platformed. They knew that they would be shared with that person's audience. And so that was how they were going to get their return on investment, was through audience growth rather than through the result itself. And so I hope in sharing that, that doesn't incentivize anyone to share fake results to like try and get platformed by a dodgy mentor. But, I think it's important that we understand some of those things. I think as well, this is part of the reason why I don't use those like results-based testimonials that a lot of people use. And it was even in the Day 2 podcast episode, the Day 2 Tashmas episode, where I was sharing one particular story of quadrupling best month ever. I would not share that story out on my socials, because out on my socials, I don't have the time and I don't have the attention span to explain how that result was generated and explain what was actually done to create that outcome. Whereas in the podcast, I feel far more comfortable sharing something like that. But I even questioned doing that in the podcast because I didn't want anyone listening to that to misunderstand or misinterpret that all you have to do is buy my program and you'll magically quadruple your income. I went through the actual strategy that we used and the step-by-step, some of the practical things that we did differently in her lead generation strategy to generate far more leads. And so, just knowing that a lot of the time, those client success stories have more to them, it can allow me to actually just be motivated to show up more consistently and to speak more openly, not in competition or in resistance to the Ryans, but actually just focus on my own zone. Another example was someone actually outed their coach for claiming their first $1 million month because they'd sold their house. And their coach, in their telling of the story of a client who started working with them one-on-one and 3-4 months later had their first ever $1 million month, they neglected to include the information that the $1 million came in from selling their house, not from their business. They implied that $1 million came in from their business. There was a big focus on money mindset and abundance and manifesting, but they also talked about the messaging in the business. They also talked about the strategy that they were helping them with in their business. And they did not at one point mention the fact that the $1 million came in from a house sale. I was also in a Facebook group for a course that I'm a member of, and someone was sharing screenshots of an AI course that they had joined on how to use AI to grow your business. And one of the very first modules in that course was how to use AI to create fake Stripe dashboards to pretend that you had more income than you currently have, to create Stripe dashboards of your clients so you can use them as testimonials. And so nothing can really be trusted out there. So why am I using untrustworthy information to decide in advance that my clients would be better off working with a Ryan when I know the real and tangible results that I'm helping people to achieve? And I also know the work and energy that goes into creating a sustainable, profitable, aligned business that is actually deeply connected to the mission that you feel like you are on in the world, the purpose of why you want to be serving people and showing up as well. And so again, I share this because there might be people in your industry where they make you feel a bit wobbly about your delivery. They might make you feel a little bit wobbly about whether you are the best of the best. And rather than getting caught up in that comparison or that perfectionism, I want you to use this as motivation. I want you to be able to see it for what it is. And yes, I do think it is very valid to ensure that you are consistently focused on making sure you are delivering well for your clients, but also you don't have to deliver results to match their cherry-picked best of the best client results that often are just 1 to 2% of their clients versus the other 90-something% of their clients that have not generated return on investment or have not generated the results that the best of the best in their testimonials are presented as. You know, I definitely fell into that trap in my first year of business. Whenever I went to a webinar or I read a sales page and there were a bunch of testimonials, I automatically took those testimonials as these are the average kind of results. Like, this is a very consistent result for people doing this course or working with this person, rather than choosing to be conscious about, okay, these are the best results that they have achieved with their top 1 to 2% of their clients. And even just reviewing those testimonials through that lens was far more effective for me to make an informed decision, because I realized that also it was really making it challenging for me to get the best out of the programs if I did choose to buy them. I remember a course that I bought in 2014. I was measuring my results in my first couple of months in that program against the testimonials I had heard of in the webinar. And those testimonials were people making $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 a month. And after 2-3 months in the program, I was nowhere near that. And so then I started getting upset at myself. I started getting frustrated with myself. There must be something I'm doing wrong. There must be something that's taught in this program that I've missed. There must be something that's wrong with my strategy, because I'm not achieving the results that I felt like were really doable for me. And also, as someone who considers themselves a high achiever, I consider myself a high performer, jumping into those courses and seeing those testimonials and not consciously telling myself this is the top 1%, instead thinking this is what most people achieve, then I was expecting to outperform them. And so it was also really demotivating for me. I found myself engaging in the program less and less because I was frustrated that my results weren't there, and I was making it mean that I was the problem, that my business was the problem, that how I was showing up, that my mindset was the problem. But that wasn't the case at all. I was actually probably outperforming the average person inside that program, but I didn't know what the average person inside that program was achieving because I was completely focused on their testimonials. I had taken that, and it wasn't a conscious thing, right? It was unconscious. I saw those testimonials in the sales webinar and I was like, great. So these are the kinds of results that I can expect. I mean, how dare I think that was the kind of results I could expect when the person on the webinar said, and here are some of the types of results you can expect if you do this work, right? Like that's exactly how it was presented. And so therefore I took that at face value. But then in doing so, it actually meant I was less likely to get great results from the course because I was constantly comparing myself to the best of the best. And so I share this because I want you to think about that as well. If seeing other providers in your industry sharing these best of the best results is making you feel a little bit wobbly or losing your self-confidence as a provider, bringing that to consciousness level of going, that's actually their best of the best results. You don't know what went into those results. You don't know what other resources that client may have had, what other people that client may have been working with. And instead, you just use this as motivation for yourself. Yes, you want to feel confident in the outcomes that you deliver for your clients, but you're not going to get more confident by constantly comparing yourself with others. You're going to get more confident by working with more people and helping more people get results. You're not going to get more confident by buying another qualification or putting your expertise in the hands of another person. You are going to build that confidence by serving more clients. So use that as motivation to work with more clients, to have a broader client base, have a broader data set of the kinds of people that you've worked with and the kinds of results that you've been able to help them to achieve. And get good at your craft, get good at delivering. That is what is going to improve your confidence in your results and what you deliver. Another reason that it really motivates me is that I do want to change the face and the reputation of the industry. I want to create a movement of people who embrace and role model those consent-based marketing practices, who role model what a deeply values-aligned business looks like and not resorting to coercion strategies, not resorting to trickery, and instead building long-term, viable, sustainable, consistently growing businesses through these spectacular consent-based marketing approaches, but also through creating a business that you can sustain and that you don't feel like you're constantly having to be on show and pretending to be someone that you're not, or that you have to, adopt that hustle bro approach in order to generate those results. We are changing the face and the reputation of this industry by showing up more consistently and by sharing more consistently and role modeling. And so rather than question if I want to be part of this, this fuels me. Those horror stories fuel me because I see them as a call to action for me to show up more consistently, for me to be more visible, and for me to help and support more business owners. And that's a beautiful thing. For several years, I had a post-it note on my desk that said, if you don't show up, Ryan will. And that's why it's so motivating to me these days. That's why, because I know that I cannot change people's experience. I cannot change the industry. I cannot change the perception of the industry by using those types of providers as evidence that I need to shrink, by using that information, hearing those horror stories as a reason for me to go down the negative spiral as well, for hearing those horror stories causing me to decide that, well, they're just going to win, so why bother? Instead, it fuels me to show up far more consistently and not only role model consent-based marketing and sales myself, but also teach consent-based marketing sales skills. Teach people how to really nail this in a way that's deeply aligned with their values. And that does change things for the better. Which brings me to my gift for you today as part of Tashmas. So I actually do have a course. I have a program called Skyrocket Sales, and that course is a self-paced, self-guided course. It's modules that you can watch along. And if you know that your sales skills need some work, if you'd like to learn how to attract and convert more clients with consent-based marketing and sales strategies, then this course is the way that I would recommend that you jump in to do that. So it's called Skyrocket Sales. And if you comment the word sales in the comments of my Day 4 Tashmas post, you'll get the Skyrocket Sales course at 66% off the regular price, which makes it $50 Australian. And that's plus GST if you are an Australian resident for tax purposes. So you'll be able to find out more about the course, read the sales page for the program, and also get the detailed instructions on how to access it for just $50 with the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/489. And this special Tashmas discount is available until the end of Tashmas. So we'll be closing off that coupon on the 13th of December. So if you want to go and check that out, make sure you do so before the 12th of December, 2025. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. I've enjoyed being on the carpet and sharing this more intimate conversation with you. Thank you, and I will see you tomorrow for Day 5 of Tashmas. And until then, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now.